The testing field was quiet. Only the sound of wind moved through the tall alien grass. The sky above was green and heavy with clouds, glowing faintly with strange lights from the nearby star. Around the wide clearing stood tall silver towers filled with alien sensors and scanners. Inside the control tent, several Zorthan officers watched their screens closely. Their long blue fingers tapped the glowing panels as they whispered in their strange language. They were ready for the new test, the camouflage challenge. At the edge of the field stood one human. His name was Sergeant Cole. He was tall, strong, and calm, with sharp brown eyes that looked more like those of a hunter than a soldier. Unlike the aliens, he wore no armor, no helmet, no glowing suit. Just simple military clothing, a knife and a small pack of mud and leaves he had collected from the forest nearby. The Zorthans laughed when they saw him. "Primitive creature," one said, showing his sharp teeth. "He thinks dirt will help him hide from our scanners." Another one joined. "Our technology can detect the smallest insect within 5 kilometers. He will be found in seconds." Cole only smiled. He had been through jungle wars before. He had learned how to hide from eyes, ears, and machines. The aliens didn't understand humans yet. They thought humans were weak because they had soft skin and small bodies. But Cole knew the truth. Humans were dangerous not because of strength or technology, but because of their mind. The alien commander, General Zarth, raised his arm. "Begin the test!" he ordered. A loud horn echoed through the valley. The digital clock started counting down from 10 minutes. The rule was simple. Cole had 10 minutes to disappear in the open terrain. The aliens would use every scanner, drone, and camera to find him. Cole took a slow breath, feeling the cool air against his skin. He looked around. The field had patches of mud, small bushes, and a line of trees at the far end. He knelt, dipped his hands into the mud, and began covering his arms, face, and chest. The mud was thick and cold. He rubbed it until his skin shined dull and dark like the earth itself. Then he broke a few branches and placed them over his back and shoulders. He moved slowly, silently, every step soft and careful. When the aliens laughed again, he didn't even look up. He knew noise and pride were mistakes of the overconfident. Inside the tent, the Zorthans watched their screens. The scanners lit up with motion waves and heat signals. For the first minute, they could see him clearly. A red dot moved across the grid. "There he is," said the operator. But then, the red dot blinked once, twice, and vanished. "What happened?" barked General Zarth. "Signal lost, sir." "The sensors cannot locate him." "Impossible." "Increase range, use the heat drones." The drones flew across the sky, their metallic eyes scanning every inch of the field. They saw nothing. Not even footprints. The wind had covered his tracks and the mud had cooled his body temperature. The commander's voice grew tense. "Check the visual feeds." Dozens of screens showed the empty ground, bushes, mud, and grass. No sign of movement. The human had disappeared. Silence filled the tent. No one spoke. Every alien officer stared at the empty field with wide eyes. For the first time in years, the Zorthans felt something unusual. Confusion. Could he have teleported? One whispered. "No, humans do not have that ability." "Then how can he vanish before our eyes?" Outside, the jungle was still. Cole lay flat against the earth, covered in mud, blending perfectly with the land. He slowed his breathing until it matched the rhythm of the wind. His eyes moved carefully, watching the drones pass overhead. He had learned this technique years ago during survival training. When machines hunted you, the best way to hide was not to fight technology, but to use nature itself. Heat-seeking drones could not detect a man who felt as cold as the ground. Motion sensors could not see a body that moved only when the wind did. Inside the tent, the aliens began to argue. Maybe he used some kind of cloaking field. Or maybe he's underground. General Zarth slammed his fist on the table. "Find him! No creature disappears like that." But even as they searched, the human was already behind them. He had crawled across the field silently, hidden by mud and leaves. He stood up slowly, just a few meters away from the observation tent. The human smiled. The aliens turned when they heard the rustle. Their glowing eyes widened in shock. He was standing right there, covered in mud, almost unrecognizable. No one spoke for a long moment. The human wiped a bit of dirt from his face and said with a grin, "Camouflage test complete." The aliens looked at each other in disbelief. The scanners had failed. Their technology had been defeated by a man with mud and bushes. For the first time, the mighty Zorthans realized something terrifying. Humans were not just adaptable. They were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. Inside the silver control tent, silence filled the air. The screen still flickered with static from the scanners, showing nothing but grass, mud, and wind. The red tracking light that once marked the human soldier was gone. General Zarth stood still, his 4 eyes narrowing. His blue scales shimmered under the control lights, and his long tail twitched with irritation. Around him, his officers moved nervously, checking every system again and again. "Run the scan once more," Zarth ordered. "Already did, sir. Thermal, motion, energy, and biosignal. All clear," replied the chief technician, his voice trembling. "The human has disappeared." Zarth's eyes darkened. "No one disappears. Not on my field. Increase the sensitivity to maximum." The scanners hummed louder, glowing in shades of orange and purple. Waves of energy spread across the jungle terrain like ripples in water. Still, no human appeared. The Zorthans had never failed a test before. They were a proud race, masters of stealth and detection. They could sense the movement of dust, the heartbeat of a hidden insect, the temperature change of a single breath. Their technology was flawless, and yet, this human had defeated it all. For a long moment, the aliens simply stared at their screens. Then one of the younger officers spoke. "Maybe he used a cloaking field, General." "No," said Zarth. "Humans are primitive. They do not have that level of tech." "Then maybe he is underground?" "There are no tunnels," another hissed. "We mapped the entire area." The confusion spread like a storm. Officers shouted theories. Technicians blamed the machines. Scientists blamed the weather. No one wanted to admit the truth, that a simple human had fooled them all. Zarth turned toward the observation window and looked out at the field. It looked empty, still, calm. But he could not shake the feeling that something was out there, watching him. He thought of the human's eyes before the test began. Steady, calm, and confident. That look now haunted him. Far away inside a smaller lab tent, Dr. Zira, the lead scientist, studied the data. Her long silver fingers danced over the holographic screen. She replayed the last image of the human before he vanished. The man was kneeling, spreading mud across his body, then covering himself with branches. Zira frowned. "He used nature?" Her assistant looked puzzled. "Mud and leaves? That's ridiculous. It cannot hide body heat." Zira leaned closer. "Unless the mud blocked the thermal signature? Unless he matched his body temperature to the ground?" The assistant blinked. "But that's not logical. No one can do that by instinct." Zira smiled faintly. "Humans can." She had studied their species before. Humans were strange creatures, soft, emotional, unpredictable. They lacked armor, claws, or fangs. Yet they had survived countless wars, harsh planets, and endless dangers. Not because of strength, because of adaptability. "They use fear, instinct, and experience," she said quietly. "They don't fight like machines. They become part of the world they stand in." In the main tent, the panic was growing. The commander shouted again, "Deploy the search drones. I want eyes on that human now." Hundreds of small machines rose into the sky, their lenses flashing red as they scanned every inch of the field. Birds flew away in fright. Trees swayed under the strong wind from the drone engines. Still nothing. "General," said the technician in a small voice. "I think he's..." Before he could finish, a faint sound came through the comms and a whisper. "Looking for me?" Every alien froze. The voice came from right behind the tent. The soldiers rushed out with their weapons ready. And there he was in the human. Standing tall, half covered in mud, half smiling, Zarth stepped forward, eyes burning. "How did you do that?" Cole tilted his head. "You rely too much on machines. We humans, we rely on the Earth." The alien stared, not understanding. Zarth clenched his fists. "You are telling me you used mud to hide from Zorthan technology?" Cole nodded simply. "Yes," the aliens murmured in disbelief. The scientist Zira walked closer, observing the mud-covered man with wonder in her eyes. "So basic, yet so perfect," she whispered. Later, when the human left the field, the aliens gathered around their leader. None spoke for several minutes. Finally, General Zarth said in a low voice, "Record today's results. Human camouflage undetectable. Method unknown." Dr. Zira corrected him softly. "Not unknown, General, natural." That word hung in the air. The aliens, Beings who had lived with machines for thousands of years suddenly felt small. They had forgotten what it meant to use instinct, to trust the ground beneath their feet. That night, in the Zorthan report archives, one new note was added under the file named Human Study Combat Evaluation. It read, "Humans show extreme adaptability, capable of vanishing without technology, behavior unpredictable, potential threat high." And far away in his tent, the human soldier smiled to himself. He knew they would never understand how he did it. Because some things cannot be learned from science. Some things are born from survival. And for the first time, the mighty Zorthans began to fear. Not the human's weapons, but the human's mind. The next morning, the Zorthan base was unusually quiet. The wind blew over the metal towers, carrying the faint hum of alien engines and the smell of ozone. The soldiers moved carefully, whispering to each other, still unsure of what had happened the day before. Everyone had seen it, the human who vanished without a trace, the one who had fooled their perfect machines using nothing but mud and leaves. Now General Zarth wanted answers. "Run the test again," he ordered coldly. "This time we record everything from every angle. No tricks." Dr. Zira, the lead scientist, nodded. "Understood, General. We will monitor in full spectrum, heat, sound, chemical, and energy readings." And once again, Sergeant Cole was brought to the testing ground. He looked calm, his eyes sharp and steady. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. All around the clearing, drones hovered like silent insects. Their red lenses glowed, scanning every vibration in the air. Tall scanners stood along the edge of the jungle, turning slowly to capture the smallest movements. This time, no one laughed. General Zarth's voice came through the loudspeakers, deep and commanding. "Human, your task is the same. You have 10 minutes to hide. Our systems will track every action. Begin." The timer started. 10 minutes. Cole didn't move at first. He stood still, letting the air touch his face, feeling the direction of the wind. Then slowly he crouched down and touched the ground. His fingers sank into the cool, wet mud. He started to cover himself again, arms, face, neck, chest, every inch of skin until it looked like the earth itself. He took leaves from a nearby bush and tied them into his hair, breaking a few twigs to shape into a natural outline around his shoulders. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't high-tech, but every move had purpose. Inside the control tent, dozens of alien eyes watched the monitors. "He's just smearing mud again," one officer said. "Wait," said Dr. Zira softly. "Look at the thermal feed." On the screen, the bright orange glow of the human's body began to fade. His heat signature cooled, blending with the temperature of the soil around him. Within moments, he disappeared again, not by technology, but by nature. The younger Zorthans gasped. General Zarth leaned forward. "Increase magnification. Use infrared scan." But the image only showed static. The sensors couldn't tell where the ground ended and the human began. Minutes passed. The drones searched the field. They scanned bushes, trees, even rocks. Every time they thought they found movement, it turned out to be wind or a shadow. "He's gone again," muttered one technician. "No signal. No motion. Impossible," Zarth hissed. "He is right there somewhere." Dr. Zira folded her arms, watching quietly. "He's not gone," she said. "He's just part of the environment now." In the field, Cole lay flat on his stomach, his body covered in a thin layer of wet soil. The smell of earth filled his lungs. He moved only when the wind did, a small shift, a tiny breath. The jungle around him seemed alive, whispering secrets to those who could listen. He knew every sound now, the buzz of the drones, the hum of scanners, even the faint click of the aliens' breathing gear far away. He waited, counting seconds in his mind. When one of the drones flew low, searching the grass, he slid deeper into the mud, letting the cool layer swallow his warmth. The drone passed right over him and never saw a thing. In the tent, Zarth slammed his hand on the console. "This is madness. How can a creature vanish like this without tech?" Dr. Zira turned to him calmly. "Perhaps that is the point, General. Humans do not rely on machines. They rely on instinct." Zarth growled. "Instinct cannot fool sensors." Zira looked at him. "No, but survival can." She turned back to the screens and smiled faintly. "He's using the same principles nature has used for millions of years. Blending patterns, hiding temperature, confusing movement. He's not fighting the environment. He is the environment." 5 minutes left. The drones began a final sweep, moving faster now. The air shimmered with energy waves as they scanned every direction. Still nothing. Then suddenly one of the drones blinked. For a split second a shape appeared, a faint shadow moving near the bushes. The technician zoomed in. There. I've got him, he shouted. But when the image cleared, it was only a wild animal, a jungle lizard crawling through the grass. The humans had a word for this, and false target. Cole smiled faintly from his hiding spot. He had led them to chase the wrong heat source by disturbing the lizard on purpose. When the clock finally hit 0, a voice came over the loudspeaker. Test complete, the drones returned. The scanners went silent. The field was calm again. Then, out of nowhere, Cole stood up from the ground, only 10 meters from the observation post. Mud slid off his shoulders and his human face appeared beneath the dirt. Gasps filled the tent. The aliens stared speechless. General Zarth stepped forward, his face hard to read. How long? Were you standing there? Cole wiped mud from his eyes and said, Long enough. Dr. Zira looked at him, amazed. You didn't hide from the machines. You defeated them. The human smiled. Sometimes the best way to hide from technology is to remember what it forgot. That night, as reports were filed and the data analyzed, one thing became clear across every Zorthan screen. Human camouflage. Unexplainable. Detection probability, ρ%. Conclusion, human instinct is a weapon. And somewhere deep in the jungle, the mud-covered man sat quietly under the alien sky, blending with the world as if he had never been there at all. The control tent was in chaos. Screens flickered, alarms blinked, and voices overlapped as every alien tried to explain the impossible. The human had just stood up from the ground, right under their noses, after 10 minutes of total invisibility. Check the scanners again, shouted General Zarth. His deep voice shook the air. There must be a malfunction. There isn't, sir, cried the technician. All systems are normal. It's not the machines, it's him. Dr. Zira didn't speak. She only stared at the frozen image on her screen. The human covered in mud, standing calmly, smiling slightly, as if the entire thing had been a game. She zoomed in on his eyes. They weren't the eyes of a soldier anymore. They were the eyes of a hunter. Something about that look made her stomach tighten. Outside, the field was quiet again. Cole had already washed off some of the mud, but his clothes were still soaked and brown. He walked slowly back toward the tent, calm and unbothered, as if he had just finished a morning jog instead of making an entire alien army lose their minds. The Zorthan guards followed him with their plasma rifles ready, unsure whether to salute or run. When he entered the tent, every alien turned to look. The silence was heavy. Zarth's 4 eyes focused on him like lasers. Human, what trick did you use? Cole tilted his head slightly. No trick. Just training. Training? Zarth barked. To fool scanners, heat sensors, drones. To fool eyes, Cole interrupted. Doesn't matter if those eyes belong to a person or a machine. If you learn how to disappear from one, you disappear from both. The aliens looked at one another, completely confused. Machines weren't supposed to be fooled by instinct. But this human spoke like he had cheated logic itself. Dr. Zira finally stepped forward. You use the environment to hide, she said softly. You blend with nature, color, shape, temperature. Cole nodded. Nature has been hiding longer than any of us. I just copied her tricks. The words hung in the air. Simple, direct. Yet every alien in the room could feel the weight behind them. The panic began slowly. At first it was just disbelief. Officers double-checked readings, convinced that the scanners had glitched. Then it turned to frustration. They couldn't explain it. They couldn't repeat it, and then came fear, because if one human could disappear like that, what if there were more? Zarth clenched his jaw. If they can vanish at will, then no sensor in the galaxy can protect us from them, he muttered. Maybe they can cloak ships the same way, another officer whispered. Maybe they can vanish in space. The tent filled with nervous murmurs. Dr. Zira raised her hand to quiet them. Enough. We are scientists, not children scared of shadows. But even she didn't sound sure anymore. Outside the tent, the jungle moved with life. Strange birds, glowing insects, soft winds. Cole stepped outside again, looking up at the green sky. He could hear them arguing behind him. He smiled a little. He had seen this before. Powerful armies that trusted their machines more than their instincts. Machines break. Nature doesn't. He crouched down and picked up a handful of wet dirt. It slipped through his fingers like water. "You can't scan this," he whispered to himself. Back inside, panic hit a new level. One of the drones, the most advanced model, suddenly reported movement near the perimeter. "Motion detected," yelled a technician. "Show it on screen," shouted Zarth. The display lit up. A heat signature moved slowly through the trees. Every soldier in the tent grabbed a weapon. "Is it the human again?" someone asked nervously. The camera zoomed in and revealed a small, furry creature sniffing the ground. A collective groan filled the tent. Zarth slammed his fist on the table. "Our sensors are chasing animals now." Cole's voice came through the comm line, casual and calm. "Told you to trust your eyes, not your toys." Every alien froze. The transmission was coming from inside their frequency. He was listening. "How did he access our comms?" shouted one of the officers. "He didn't," said Zira. Her face went pale. "He's standing right outside." Zarth turned to the tent flap, and there he was. Cole leaned casually against the pole, still half covered in mud, holding a small leaf between his fingers. "Nice tech you've got," he said, "but sometimes you just need the right camouflage." The room erupted with shouts and confusion. Some soldiers aimed their weapons. Others backed away. "Stop!" Zarth roared. "Do not shoot!" Cole looked around, amused. "Relax, just proving a point." He tossed the leaf onto the floor. "You all see that? Nature's camouflage. Works better than any shield." Dr. Zira stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "Why show us this? You could have stayed hidden." Cole looked at her seriously. "Because sooner or later someone's going to fight humans again. And when they do, I want them to remember this." He turned and walked away, his muddy boots leaving faint prints on the metal floor. When he was gone, no one spoke for several minutes. The air felt heavier somehow. Finally, Zarth looked at Zira. "Record this test as terminated. Subject unpredictable. Result unexplainable." Zira nodded, still staring at the empty doorway where the human had stood. "Unexplainable," she whispered. "And unstoppable." Outside, the jungle wind carried a low laugh. It was almost human, and somewhere between the trees a figure moved silently again, unseen, unheard, like the ghost of the planet itself. The human had vanished once more. The jungle was quiet again. Only the faint hum of alien machines filled the air. The test field, once filled with noise and confusion, now stood still, a silent witness to something the Zorthons could not explain. General Zarth watched the human from a distance. Sergeant Cole sat on a fallen tree, cleaning the mud from his boots. He looked calm, almost peaceful, as if nothing unusual had happened. The general could not understand him. No fear, no pride. Just that quiet human calmness that somehow made everything worse. Dr. Zira approached with her data tablet, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "He's waiting for you, General," she said. Zarth grunted. "Waiting? For what? Another trick?" Zira shook her head. "For you to listen." The general frowned, but he walked toward the human anyway. Cole didn't move. He simply looked up and said, "You want to know how I did it?" Zarth crossed his arms. "Yes, you made my soldiers panic. You made my machines blind. You embarrassed the Zorthan Empire. I want to know how." Cole smiled faintly. "I didn't do anything special. I just used what was already there." He picked up a handful of dirt and let it fall through his fingers. The brown dust scattered in the wind. "You see this?" he said softly. "This is older than both of us. It's smarter, too. It hides everything that falls into it. Bones, blood, even light. The ground remembers every creature that ever tried to survive." Zarth's tail flicked impatiently. "Poetry will not explain science, human." Cole shrugged. "Maybe not. But science can't always explain survival." The general's eyes narrowed. "Survival is a matter of strength and technology." "No," Cole said simply. "Survival is a matter of understanding." He stood up and walked a few steps into the open field. The ground was soft beneath his boots, the air warm and heavy with moisture. He gestured around him. "When your scanners failed, I didn't fight them. I just stopped being something they could see. You try to dominate your environment. Humans learn to become it." Zira tilted her head. "Become the environment?" Cole nodded. "You look at the jungle and see chaos. We look and see patterns, color, light, shadow, wind. Nature doesn't fight to survive. It adapts. The tiger changes its stripes. The chameleon changes its skin. The human changes his mind. He looked directly at Zarth. That's what you don't understand. You think survival comes from control, but real survival comes from letting go. Zira listened quietly, her long fingers resting against her datapad. Every word felt heavy, like something ancient and true. Cole continued. When I was a soldier back on Earth, we didn't always have tech. Sometimes our radios failed. Our drones crashed. Our maps were wrong. But we still found a way. Not because we had the best gear, but because we refused to quit. Zarth frowned. So you hid in the mud out of stubbornness? Cole smiled. Exactly. Humans don't stop just because something looks impossible. We get smarter. We get dirtier. We learn. He paused, looking out toward the trees where strange alien birds sang softly. When you've been hunted long enough, you stop relying on tools. You start relying on yourself. That's what nature teaches. That's what humans remember. Dr. Zira stepped closer. You call that instinct? We call it unpredictability. Cole chuckled. That's fine. You can call it what you like. But unpredictability keeps us alive. He looked at the silver towers around the field, the same ones that had failed to see him. Your machines are perfect. But perfection makes you blind. It makes you predictable. You always expect the same outcome. Humans, we don't. That's why we survive things we shouldn't. For a moment, even General Zarth was silent. Zira finally spoke, her voice quiet. You're saying weakness is strength? Cole looked at her and smiled softly. Sometimes, yes. Weakness teaches you to adapt. Fear teaches you to think. Pain teaches you to fight smarter. Nature has no mercy, but it teaches the best lessons. The wind moved through the trees again, carrying the faint smell of rain. Zarth looked down at the mud where the human had once hidden. The spot was still damp and dark. He muttered almost to himself, You made us fear dirt. Cole laughed quietly. Then maybe you finally learned something real. Zira closed her tablet, her eyes thoughtful. You made us realize something, human. For all our power, we've forgotten what it means to feel the world. You reminded us. Cole looked at her kindly. Good, because the universe doesn't care how advanced you are. It only cares how long you can keep going. When he walked away, neither Zarth nor Zira stopped him. They just watched him disappear into the mist of the jungle again. No sound, no trace, just silence and leaves. The general finally spoke, his voice low. He used mud to vanish, and words to humble us. Zira nodded. Maybe both are weapons we never learned to use. Outside, thunder rumbled over the horizon. The storm was coming, and somewhere beneath the trees, the human walked calmly through the rain, becoming one with the planet around him, invisible again, not through science, but through understanding, because that was the true lesson of survival. The next sunrise came quietly. Mist rolled across the jungle floor like a silver river, and the sound of distant alien birds filled the air. The testing ground, once alive with energy and scanners, was now strangely calm. The Zorthan banners fluttered weakly in the wind. The camouflage experiment was officially over. But the fear, that was just beginning. Inside the main control tent, the air felt heavy. No one spoke loudly. The technicians moved carefully, as if afraid their voices might break something unseen. The drones that once buzzed like angry wasps now sat silent on their racks. Even their glowing red eyes looked dimmer, almost ashamed. Dr. Zira stood in front of the large holoscreen, reviewing data for the 100th time. The numbers didn't lie. The human had beaten every sensor, every scanner, every predictive model. Thermal reading, 0. Motion pattern, negative. Energy trace, none. The computer repeated in its smooth, robotic tone. She sighed softly. He broke our science, she whispered. Behind her, General Zarth entered the room, his steps slow and heavy. His uniform was spotless as always, but his face carried the weight of something deeper, a kind of respect mixed with unease. Report, he said. Zira turned, handing him her tablet. All recordings confirm the same result. The human achieved total concealment without technology. Our systems failed to detect him under any condition. Zarth scrolled through the report. The words glowed coldly across the screen. Result, human camouflage. Unexplainable. Probability of detection, 0.0%. Threat level, unpredictable. He set the tablet down and stared at the tent wall for a long time. Outside, the jungle whispered softly in the wind when as if mocking him. A young Zorthan soldier entered nervously. "General, the human is leaving." "Let him go," Zarth said quietly. "But sir, we haven't—" "I said let him go." The soldier saluted and hurried out. Through the open tent flap, Zarth could see the human walking down the dirt path toward the edge of the forest. No armor, no weapon, just his pack slung over one shoulder. He didn't look like a warrior, and yet every soldier who saw him stepped aside, their eyes filled with silent respect. He had turned their fear into something deeper, wonder. Later that day, the debriefing began. Dozens of Zorthan officers gathered in the main hall, sitting around a long, glowing table. The room was filled with quiet tension. Dr. Zira stood at the front, her voice calm but steady. "We began this experiment to measure human adaptability," she said. "What we found was something else entirely." She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared. Sergeant Cole, half covered in mud, his eyes sharp and focused. "This," she continued, "is what humans call camouflage. But it is not just hiding. It is understanding." The subject did not vanish by machine. He became part of his surroundings. The officers murmured softly. One of them raised a trembling hand. "You mean he merged with the planet?" "In a way, yes," Zira replied. "He matched his temperature to the earth, his movement to the wind, his silence to the forest. Our machines could not separate him from nature itself." Another officer spoke, voice uncertain. "If humans can do this, what else can they do?" That question hung in the air like smoke. No one had an answer. When the meeting ended, Zarth stayed behind. He stared at the holographic image still floating above the table. The human's eyes seemed to look straight at him, calm and unshaken. He remembered how the man had said, "Sometimes the best way to hide from technology is to remember what it forgot." Zarth muttered. "We forgot everything." Dr. Zira stepped beside him. "You mean instinct?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. We built machines so powerful that we stopped learning how to think like hunters." Zira looked at him thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is why humans scare us. They still remember what it means to be prey, and that makes them perfect predators." Zarth said nothing. That night, the official report was transmitted to the Zorthan High Command. It was marked as top priority human study. The closing note read, "Humans display a unique balance between intelligence and instinct. Their adaptability is not limited by tools but enhanced by their environment. Recommend caution in future engagements. Species considered dangerously unpredictable." The message spread quickly through the fleet. On every Zorthan ship, whispers began. "They say the human can disappear in plain sight. They say he hides with mud. They say he becomes part of the planet." Soon, the story changed from science to legend. Back in the jungle, Cole sat by a campfire staring at the alien stars above. He knew the Zorthans were still watching, still studying him. But he didn't mind. He wasn't their enemy. Not yet. He took a deep breath of the damp night air. The fire crackled softly. Somewhere in the distance, one of the alien drones hovered silently, recording. He looked straight at it and smiled. "Tell your commander," he said quietly. "This was never about hiding. It was about surviving." The drone blinked once and flew away. Cole watched it vanish into the night sky. The jungle swallowed the sound, and as the stars shimmered above him, he whispered to himself, "Let them fear what they don't understand." By morning, the Zorthan Empire had a new rule in its military manuals. Never underestimate a human, especially when he's standing still. And across the galaxy, a quiet rumor began to grow. The story of the man who became invisible without machines. The story of the human who taught aliens fear. The jungle never forgot him. Long after Sergeant Cole had left the Zorthan camp, the wind still carried his memory. The leaves still whispered his name. The soil still held the mark of his footprints, faint, almost ghostly. To the human, it was just another mission. But to the aliens, it became something else. Something far greater. In the days that followed, the Zorthan base turned silent. Training stopped. Patrols were canceled. Scientists rechecked their sensors again and again, as if hoping to find proof that what they saw had been a dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was a warning. General Zarth sat in his quarters, the holographic reports glowing dimly before him. Each one said the same thing: human camouflage unexplainable, He rubbed his temples, tired. One man defeated all our scanners. Dr. Zira entered quietly, holding a small data pad. It's spreading, she said. What is? The story. Other bases are talking about it. Even the high command knows. Zarth looked up slowly. And what are they saying? Zira hesitated, then said softly, They're calling him the invisible human. Across the galaxy, the story traveled like wildfire. At first, it was just whispers among soldiers. They say he vanished into the mud. They say he walked through their scanners unseen. They say the Zorthan saw fear for the first time. Soon, the tale reached spaceports and colonies, told in low voices over drinks and dim lights. Each time it grew a little grander, a little more impossible. In one version, the human melted into the earth. In another, he turned into smoke and reappeared behind his enemies. And in the wildest tales, they said the man could walk between shadows, a living ghost. But no matter how the story changed, one truth remained the same. No one underestimated humans again. Back on Earth, Cole returned quietly. No medals, no ceremonies, just silence. He didn't need anyone to know what he had done. His mission had never been about glory. It was about proving a point, that the strength of humanity did not come from machines or power, but from will. He looked out over the training fields where new recruits were learning to hide and survive. One young soldier asked him, Sir, is it true you fooled alien tech with just mud? Cole smiled faintly. It's not about the mud, he said. It's about patience. About knowing the world better than your enemy does. The boy frowned. But isn't that impossible? Cole chuckled. Impossible is what the other guy believes right before he loses. The boy didn't fully understand, but one day he would. Far away, deep in Zorthan space, the High Command studied their new data. They created new training programs, human simulation scenarios, to prepare soldiers for encounters with humans. But the results were the same. Every simulation failed. The human always won. The reason wasn't strength. It wasn't intelligence. It was unpredictability. One Zorthan general summed it up in a line that would be repeated across fleets for generations. You can predict a storm, but not a human. Meanwhile, on the jungle planet, nature had reclaimed the testing grounds. The scanners rusted. The towers stood silent. The jungle swallowed everything, yet sometimes, soldiers on patrol swore they saw movement in the trees. A shadow that shouldn't be there. A whisper that didn't belong to the wind. They called it the ghost of the human. One night, a young guard sitting by the perimeter saw something move beyond the lights. He raised his rifle, his heart pounding. Who's there? He called out. No answer, just the faintest voice, calm and human, carried by the wind. Still watching? The guard froze. When he blinked, the sound was gone. Only the rustling leaves remained. He ran to his commander, trembling. Sir, I think I saw him. The commander looked at him, expression unreadable. No, he said slowly. You don't see him. That's the point. Years passed. The legend grew. Children of alien soldiers whispered about the human who became the forest. Scholars debated his existence. Some said it was myth. Others said it was proof that humans had evolved differently, shaped by struggle, molded by survival. In Zorthan culture, a new proverb was born. Fear the creature that smiles when unseen. And on one distant night, long after the galaxy had moved on, a transmission was discovered on an old Zorthan data drive. It was a recording from the first experiment, the one where the human vanished. The final words captured in the audio were simple. Camouflage test complete. Target undetectable. Subject, human. Then static. The scientists who listened to it years later sat in silence. One finally said, maybe he's still out there. The others laughed nervously. But none of them slept easily that night. Back on Earth, Cole stood on a cliff overlooking a vast ocean. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. The waves crashed softly against the rocks. He closed his eyes and smiled. The galaxy would remember his kind not as conquerors or monsters, but as survivors. Because that's what humanity was and always would be. Not the strongest. Not the smartest. But the most stubborn, the ones who never stopped adapting. And somewhere across the stars, even the Zorthans still whispered one name with quiet respect. The invisible human.